On the outskirts of a sleepy town stood Blackthorn Asylum, a crumbling relic of a bygone era. Once a place of healing, it had long since been abandoned, its halls left to rot, and its secrets buried beneath layers of dust. The townsfolk avoided it, speaking of it only in hushed tones. They said the asylum was cursed, that the cries of its patients could still be heard on quiet nights. But for Emma, a young writer seeking inspiration, the asylum was irresistible. Emma had always been drawn to the macabre. She wrote stories of ghosts and madness, of places where the living and the dead coexisted. When she heard about Blackthorn Asylum, she knew she had to see it for herself. She rented a small cabin at the edge of town and spent her days researching the asylum's history. What she found was chilling. The asylum had been shut down after a series of unexplained deaths, its director driven to madness. The patients had been transferred, but some said not all of them had left. One rainy afternoon, Emma ventured into the asylum. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the floorboards groaned beneath her feet. She explored room after room, each one more unsettling than the last. And then, in the director's office, she found it. A leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. The name on the cover was barely legible. Dr. Nathaniel Greaves. Emma took the journal back to her cabin and began to read. The entries were detailed, chronicling the treatments used on the patients, treatments that grew increasingly bizarre and cruel. Dr. Greaves wrote of experiments meant to purge the mind of its weaknesses, of patients who claimed to hear voices, of shadows that moved on their own. And then, near the end, the entries took a darker turn. Dr. Greaves wrote of a patient known only as Subject 13, a man who seemed to defy all understanding. He speaks of a place beyond the walls, a place where the mind is free, but the soul is trapped. As Emma read, she began to notice strange things. The cabin, which had once felt cozy, now felt oppressive. She heard whispers when no one was there, saw shadows darting in the corners of her vision. At first, she told herself it was her imagination, the result of spending too much time alone with the journal. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They called her name. One night, Emma awoke to the sound of footsteps outside her cabin. She peered through the window and saw a figure standing in the moonlight. A man in a tattered asylum uniform, his face gaunt and hollow. He stared at her for a moment, then turned and walked toward the asylum. Emma followed, her curiosity outweighing her fear. The asylum was different at night. The air was colder, the shadows deeper. Emma followed the man through the halls, her flashlight casting long, flickering beams on the walls. She found him in the basement, standing before a rusted iron door. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "But now that you're here, you'll see. You'll see what he saw." The man opened the door, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Emma hesitated, but the whispers urged her forward. She descended the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. At the bottom, she found a small circular room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and in the center of the room was a chair, its restraint stained with rust. Emma felt a wave of dizziness as she stepped into the room. The whispers became a cacophony, filling her mind with images she couldn't understand. She saw Dr. Greaves, his face twisted in madness, conducting experiments on patients who screamed in agony. She saw Subject 13, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, speaking in a language that made her blood run cold. And then she saw herself, sitting in the chair, the restraints tightening around her wrists. Emma stumbled back, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She realized the truth. The journal, the whispers, the man in the asylum uniform, it was all a trap. The asylum was alive, its walls imbued with the madness of those who had suffered within them. And it wanted her. Emma ran, the asylum's halls twisting and shifting around her. The whispers grew louder, more desperate, as if the walls themselves were trying to hold her back. She reached the entrance and burst into the night, the cold air a shock to her lungs. She didn't stop running until she reached her cabin. The next morning, Emma packed her things and left the cabin. She told herself she would never return to Blackthorn Asylum, that she would forget what she had seen. But as she drove away, she noticed something in the passenger seat. The journal. She hadn't brought it with her. She opened it and found a new entry, written in her own handwriting. "The walls are thin here," it read, "and the mind is fragile. You will return. You must." Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed this eerie tale, don't forget to leave a like, and if you crave more chilling narratives, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Until next time.